there is a global monetary shift happening. I talk a lot about it. I know you're familiar with it. But when you step back and look at what's happening across the global south, you got central banks buying gold hand over fist. It's funny because central banks, by the way, as a footnote, came out and said they bought more gold, or the reporting was that the central banks bought more gold in the first quarter of this year than ever before, ever.
Mm-hmm.
But the World Gold Council just came out and said, you guys are lying bastards. You actually bought 15x more than you said you bought. You didn't buy the 16 tons you said you bought 240 tons. So there's no question that gold is being ramped up by the most well-informed traders in the world. And at the same time, I've talked a lot about, and probably with you, the new payment systems that are emerging, the cross interbank payment system, SIPs, the M-Bridge. These are both operational. And you have, without prejudice, more trade happening outside the dollar than ever before. I guess my question to you is, are these isolated stories or are they all chapters of the same book? In other words, you know, are these one-offs, or are we seeing a new shift to perhaps a new monetary system to not replace the dollar, but to run alongside it?
Yeah, I think run alongside it. If you look at, the peak of the Bretton Woods system, there was 38,000 tons of gold held by central banks. So today we have about 37,000 tons of gold held by central banks. So you could argue that we have a gold standard right now, sort of a low-profile gold standard in parts of the world. I think this is to run alongside it, but I don't think America's just going to stand by and watch it happen. So there's a whole bunch of directions that we can go. I kind of like, I think when the last time you and I spoke, we had a little bit of back and forth about this, but China is setting up their system and hoping to bring people along with them by having some sort of alternative currency. I don't know if it's going to be gold backed. It sure seems like that's what they want. But if you look back into the 1990s, a lot of the Pan-Asian countries, because of a strong dollar and the crisis that they were going through, wanted to create their own currency, something like the euro, right? And they needed it desperately, but they couldn't come to agreement on how to go about doing it. And it was supposed to be sort of a gold standard currency. They couldn't come to an agreement when they desperately needed it. So I question whether, a lot of people talk about the BRICS creating their own currency. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to be able to come to an agreement on how it's going to work. But having said that, I do believe there is sort of a gold standard already, given how much central banks are holding as reserve assets. It's similar to what it was at the height of the Bretton Woods. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm torn on it, I guess, is where I'm going with this. And the reason I'm torn on it is because I see everything that America's doing in the background. People talked about CBDCs. Oh, it's not going to happen. Well, it's just been basically postponed for another vote, you could say, until 2020 or 2030. But you still have stable coins, the Genius Act, the Clarity Act. This is a big deal. This is a big deal for US dollar hegemony. So I'm rambling here. I could go on forever, but I also think Wars has his own ideas of how he can keep the dollar on top for longer. But I think it's just a parallel system, I guess, in a nutshell. And I don't know how well it's going to work.
Yeah, and I don't think China wants to be the world reserve currency because they understand that you can't have a manufacturing base if you are, Triffin's dilemma. But I think the rails are being set up, multipolar rails, for countries to use their own currency as much as possible for trade, settling imbalances in gold through all these multi-jurisdictional vaulting systems we see springing up all over the global south. The Shanghai Metals Exchange has aspirations of placing throughout the entire Belt Road Initiative. We see the new one that just opened up in Singapore, and one in Hong Kong that just opened up the other day for price setting. Now you're going to have a challenger to the West for the first time, where Hong Kong and much like United Arab Emirates, where it's same day settlement, and Singapore, these exchanges are being built to challenge the Western hegemony. Maybe they don't want to be world reserve, but I think that they want to be responsible for their own monetary affairs rather than bolstering ours. It's an interesting time, to say the least. And I do agree with you. It is no question a shift to challenge the Western hegemony. And as far as gold is concerned, it doesn't need to replace the dollar. It just needs to be viewed as a alternative settlement vehicle. It is
Yeah.
already. You've seen that happen as collateral. It is. You see that happening already, and I think it's kind of taking shape as you know a very important part of a new monetary system. I appreciate your perspective. So let's look at a big picture for a moment. So I don't know. I like your perspective. When historians look back on this decade, do you think that what do you think that they will say was the real turning point, the moment that started
COVID.
this change? COVID, yeah, but that was quick. I wasn't sure
Yeah.
what you're going to say there. I wasn't sure if you say AI, if you were going to say, the war, COVID. I would agree that certainly did change everything, didn't it? It changed everything
Mhm.
for me, no question about it. Why do you say that?
For a couple of different reasons. One, I mean, it was the biggest print uh, in my lifetime for money. Two, society, how everybody treated each other. So it was a wedge issue, obviously, how to handle it. You know, do you go get a vaccine? Do you not? Neighbors snitching on each other. I mean, in certain areas, it was worse than others, right? Lockdowns are unhealthy and so forth. And I think it just wedged society against each other. Ton of money was printed. People started. It showed people, whether they realized it or not, that money's not that valuable if they're going to give it away for free. And yeah, that's what I think kicked off this inflationary regime. And I think the hangover. We're still dealing with the hangover of COVID, and from a monetary policy perspective and fiscal. So that's why I think it's the biggest issue. The second, if I can say there's a second, was what Biden did to Russia, cutting them off of the SWIFT, seizing assets. That turned the tide on potentially U.S. dollar hegemony and having treasuries in your reserves. So those two are the biggest, in my opinion. But COVID is number one. Like, I like to focus on macro issues that include societal, political, warfare, and commodities. And I think COVID touched everything.
Yeah, I love that, and I do too. I mean, I do too. I think the macro perspective is very important right now. The micro kind of gets you lost in the minutia. I think this is a big picture. You touched on the Genius Act. I talk about that all the time. I think it's
Yeah.
massive, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, probably don't have enough time to jump deep into that right now. But I like your perspective on things, and it is the forest that matters, not the individual trees in and of themselves.